Hi, it's Sam here from SampleLibraryReview.com, and today we're having a look at soft string soloists, which presents a violin, viola and cello in the gentle and intimate Scandi String style. With 9 articulations for each instrument in the trio, including an emotive legato, it dives deep into nuanced dynamics and subtle textures. Fracture Sounds have created an expressive tool that really captures the aching beauty of neoclassical strings. It's their second instalment in a specialised soloist line that began with brass band soloists. That was inspired by traditional colliery brass bands of Northern England, and this time we travel further north to explore a string playing style deeply rooted in Scandinavian folk music. It's a raw and often fragile sound that sits more within a mix as opposed to a more traditional virtuosic style, which is more polished and designed to stick out above a large orchestra. In recent years, composers such as Olafur Arnalds, Johan Johansson and Hilda Guðnadóttir have really embraced this Scandi aesthetic with its trademark softer tones, textural timbres, dynamic swells and short expressive gestures. It's a sound that's become increasingly popular in contemporary scoring and for certain recording artists. In contrast to a more classical style, it seems to fit better with close mic pianos and organic leaning synth or hybrid elements, often in more minimal compositions. The recording is also really critical and requires lots of close detail, but also with some tasteful ambience, so we get a natural cinematic quality. The library is a 26GB download from an uncompressed 58GB sample pool. We get 3 instruments, violin, viola and cello. There were 9 articulations per instrument, including 2 legato types. We've got 3 microphone positions, close, mid and far, and up to 3 dynamic layers and 5 round robins. There's a smart legato performance engine and flexible instrument placement in situ, custom and centre. It runs in the free contact player 6.7 or later and downloads via native access and features full NKS support with complete control hardware. Right, let's dive in and see what we have here. Here are the violin legatos. That's such a pure and realistic tone. You can really hear the hairs of the bow pulling on the string and the wood vibrating. The legato is not overly smooth, and I think that gives some real intention to the note change. Portamento transition is triggered with a low velocity, but I found this to happen a little too often for my keyboard and playing style. And it's a bit of a shame we can't tweak that velocity at which it's triggered. There's no independent expression control here, which some may miss, but using this dynamic range slider here can have a similar effect and increase or decrease the relative volume on the mod wheel. Here it is at max, which emulates using expression with the mod wheel for a wide dynamic range. We've got 2 legato types. The smart one uses an innovative look-ahead feature on the MIDI to ensure the landing note hits on time regardless of playing speed. This way you can get a variable legato speed in real time depending on what you're playing, but latency is always the same. There's no fiddly MIDI nudging around required afterwards. You just match that figure that you dial in onto your DAW MIDI track offset and it's good to go. Set this low for more response when recording and then extend afterwards for more realism. It's the best way of doing it. You're going to need at least 250 milliseconds required for a full portamento transition to sound, so bear that in mind. The delay CC data here will toggle if the mod wheel moves are also delayed. So most DAWs will just want this on, but in Reaper, for example, it's best turned off as track delay there only affects notes. It's worth pointing out that when the smart mode is on, the latency will also apply to other articulations, so you can key switch easily and not have to change an immediate offset in your DAW. But watch out for that if you're not using legato, as it does affect how tight the sample is at the start. I would switch to classic in this case so you retain the default sample start position for any non-legato articulations. This classic mode is a more familiar legato we're used to, and it's useful to enable more responsive, faster playing, as the knob works essentially like a sample start control. By turning it clockwise, we're going to get some quick legato transitions and vice versa. Alt dragging will enable some adaptive legato according to the performance, but it's less precise than the smart one, so notes might have to be individually nudged later to get the timing bang on. It does, however, enable use of the sustain pedal and playable trills holding one note down as another is pressed. It's good, but I'm not massively fond of this overly long release trigger it seems to have, which is markedly longer than when in the smart mode. Basically, comparing the two, the smart is the easiest in most cases and means way less MIDI editing at the expense of some latency. The classic is better for a more responsive, faster playing style that can do trills, and you can use a sustain pedal of course, but you'll have that varying latency. Moving on, here with the cello sustains with a fairly dry mix. It's a really soft and evocative sound. I'd say we're looking at dynamics from maybe PP to MF, so plenty of detailed control within that range. On the mix now, let's go the other way and use some onboard convolution reverb. Personally, I like this type of string sound on the dry side, and for the rest of this review we'll actually take the reverb off. Now here's some harmonics on the viola. That's got an organ-like tone at times. The harmonics are boldest on the viola, but they're actually quite powerful in the other instruments too, which I like. Some libraries tend to make these really a bit too wispy and light. Now onto these special slow sustains, which are really awesome. Sounds a bit like on note release we get another bow stroke, or at least a pronounced long release. As shown, this can work nicely to cascade moving parts into each other, or to be played more minimally and leaving the release to ring out between note clusters. Just so much fun to play this one. There's little here in terms of shorts, which is a bit of a shame, as pointing staccato is a well-used articulation in neoclassical scoring, but I think that would probably mean it's not so much of a soft string soloist library, because them sort of more aggressive shorts are not particularly soft. Anyway, the closest we get to shorts is this kind of long short called a gesture, with the dynamics triggered by velocity. It's a bit longer than a staccato and has elements of a portato or marcato, but with a soft attack and a vibrato, which I like a lot. This one is a good opportunity to try the mics out. So we've got a simple 3-mic pair set up at the Nave studio. I'll play each of them in turn so you can get a good idea about how they all sound. The final articulations are some really effective swells with performed crescendo and decrescendo at 3 different lengths and multiple dynamics triggered by velocity. The long ones will also adapt to the length of time you hold a note down, which can certainly help to get it feeling right for different tempos. I'm loving these longs with the bow change, so convincing and usable. There's some round robins at play here as well, which can really help immensely if playing repeated notes. It's worth pointing out actually that across the library we've got up to 5 round robins and 3 dynamic layers. These swells sound great when played quite straight and in time, but when you loosen it up and build sequences of overlapping notes and varying velocities, it's really sublime. I've increased the colour here to brighten it up and added a stereo width for a wider soundstage, with a touch of shimmer reverb for the glory. Undoubtedly, this library is focused on a very particular string sound, but as you can hear, it's got a significant range in what you can get out of it. The final thing is the instrument placement. The default in situ here is the violin left, viola middle and cello right. This classical string staging works great. There were some lovely demos of the trio playing together to check out on the Fracture Sounds website. However, sometimes you might want to change this to fit with your arrangement. The custom position here will allow you to move the performer anywhere else in the room. It's achieved by cleverly using multiple custom IRs captured from different positions in the studio with the same microphone setup used for the instruments. Their relative levels can then be controlled by the mid and far mic faders, with the close mic remaining active as normal but panned to the position on the grid to give a sense of direction. Although not quite as pure as the in situ originals, because we've got 2 actual mic signals that kind of get replaced by IRs, it still is remarkably convincing. A clever use of this will be to expand the section in terms of number of players and have them placed across the soundstage. Should you need to entirely eliminate the natural panning, however, the centre stereo does this instantly. The mic mix is actually disabled here, as this is a totally new pair of stereo mics, and they're positioned a little further back from the normal close ones. This direct and pretty dry sound is full of detail and perfect for adding external reverb and door panning to. From the same recording sessions, Fracture Sounds also created a free sister library as part of their excellent Blueprint series. It's called String Trio and works as an ensemble patch. It's a good way to get a taster of soft string soloists, whilst also including some alternative articulations. Fracture Sounds are really carving out a substantial niche for themselves, creating libraries that are, for want of a better description, indie cinematic. By that I mean they're not hiring huge symphony orchestras and world famous rooms, instead opting to work with smaller ensembles or single players and in smaller spaces, yet still achieving an emotional depth and filmic quality on par with more Hollywood-esque libraries, more A24 than Universal Pictures. Soft String Soloists is a shining example of this aesthetic. The overall feel in use makes this library especially excellent for melancholic and minimalistic writing, where we can clearly hear the fragile beauty and really focus on the evocative timbres. While it might be a little short on short, so to speak, it still offers plenty of incredibly useful articulations that are just so composer friendly. There's plenty of scope for these sounds to work in recording artist productions too. It's not just a soundtrack creator's tool. On a more technical level, the clever spatial placement section adds significant flexibility, and the smart Legato makes writing complex lines much easier with far less editing to do on the MIDI data. Special mention should be made of the three incredible first chair soloists who really nailed the nuanced Scandi String style here, which coupled with excellent engineering and a wonderful space has created beautiful notes just waiting to inspire a new piece of music. I hope you enjoyed that review of Fracture Sounds Soft String Soloists. Please comment below and let us know what you thought about it. Please like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and be sure to check out samplelibrareview.com for more reviews and the latest deal compressor, and also the winter sales page, which has all the best offers going on this season. I'll see you on the next one.